And so that's where it grew out of. This Great Disappointment time was organized in 1863. But to just give you the picture, what I love about the Adventist Church is that we're sort of the commingling of Christians from many different backgrounds that basically put aside their differences. Back after Jesus didn't come in 1844, there were Baptists, Methodists, Congregationalists, Presbyterians, all these different churches. And they said, let's study together. We've obviously misunderstood the word. There's probably many other misunderstandings. It had not been that long since the Protestants came out of the Dark Ages where the truth was cast to the ground. And they said, let's study. And in those studies from Christians of many denominations, the church developed. They said, let's get back to the Bible. They realized there were several things they'd been following that were not biblical. And so we'll be talking about what some of those things are and what some of them are not. Some of the principal founders of our church, there was a sea captain who had been, I believe, a Presbyterian, Joseph Bates, a very interesting man. If you want to hear an amazing autobiography, this guy started out running away as a cabin boy, ended up in jail and pressed into the British Navy and shipwrecked and almost eaten by sharks, and just an incredible story. Joseph Bates, one of the founders of the church, along with James White, Ellen White, and a number of others, and they were all young. Many of them were in their 20s. Joseph Bates was sort of the senior man in the group.
Okay. So we've heard this from people like Justin Koo, which you guys have responded to him before, that present day Seventh-Day Adventism is a big tent. It's a commingling. It's an ecumenical safe haven. Is this the case? Is Seventh-Day Adventism, like you were just saying, CMB, they have this hyper skepticism to any sort of ecumenicism, but then when it's convenient, they want to appeal back to their ecumenical roots. Wait. So you're fearful of ecumenicalism today, but then when it's convenient to try and seem inclusive and not this real hyper exclusivism, which is what it actually is, then you want to appeal back to your roots and say, oh man, well, we're just a big tent. We're a big tent of people from all walks. We just all put our differences aside. Bull crap.
Right. So if I could be, and I'm going to be a little blunt, so forgive me here. I can only be me here. If this was a tent, if SDAism was a tent, it would be Ringling Brothers Circus. I'm not even lying. Like this kind of thing, it's a theological house of cards is what it is. Okay. And a lot of heretical positions are embraced. A lot of heretical positions are embraced. Okay. And promoted. And most of them are rooted and grounded in all the things that we're not supposed to do. Proof texting, either proof texting the Bible or watch this, proof texting Ellen White's writings. That's what they do.
Well, yeah.
It's just what they do.
And earlier, like I said, he wanted to distance themselves from the Millerite movement.
Right.
We're not to be confused with them.
Right.
But literally, like minutes later, now he's
you go back to them.
We're
ecumenical because of them.
Right. And then you want to call William Miller Father Miller in all the early writings? Like, are you serious? Like, this is your spiritual father. This is your pedigree. Deal with it.
Yeah. And I don't want to camp out on this. I don't want to camp out on this too long because this could be a whole stream in and of itself. But he mentioned people like Joseph Bates. Oh, this guy's great. This man is a wonderful. If you want to read an amazing story, read Joseph Bates. I think he was a Presbyterian. Folks, I'm telling you, as a Presbyterian, Elsie, you're a Presbyterian. I'm telling you, as a Presbyterian, I have read this man. I haven't read his biography like Doug mentioned, but I've read his theology, which matters when it comes to being a Presbyterian. I'm telling you right now, this man was not a Presbyterian. And this man would have been put under church discipline in the Presbyterian Church, at least in the PCA, the Presbyterian Church of America. This man would have been put under church discipline. He actually wouldn't even have been in the PCA because he wouldn't have agreed with the teachings of the church. Elsie, why should people be concerned about the theology of people that he mentioned, like James White, Ellen White, Joseph Bates? Were these people theologically sound individuals?
Not at all. Just rabid, young, exuberant fanatics who don't submit to authority, who don't submit to the historical Christian writings, the creeds. Adventists flatly reject all of the creeds. And when you go through them, they are beautiful, a beautiful summation of what Christians have always believed.
And they're
biblical summation of what Christians have always believed. They reject them. James White, Ellen White's husband, was a Christian connectionist, which were Arians. Ellen White, Joseph Bates. Joseph Bates had the 7-year theory from the 7 sprinkles of blood on the altar.
Right.
He predicted Christ's coming 7 years from that. I mean, it was crazy. There are so many things that, as you read them, these guys didn't want anything to do with orthodox, authentic, biblical, expositional Christianity. They were exuberant fanatics who would not submit to any form of creedal authority and recognize Christian authority and just do their own thing. And as they keep on being disappointed and keep making a mess of themselves, they eventually found the Seventh-Day Adventist Church. And every other month is a different wacky theory and what have you. I tell you, up to before her death in early 1900s, Ellen White and the Adventists were still setting dates and all kinds of stuff. All kinds of crazy things.
And Adventists, you guys need to really stop with this anti-creedal stuff. You guys do have a creed. It's called your 28 fundamental beliefs. It definitionally is a creed. They'll rag on other people for wanting to affirm things that, I don't know, actually go back to the apostles. We argue with Rome, for example, as Protestants on matters of church history. Oftentimes we're not just throwing the church fathers completely out like the Seventh-Day Adventist Church does. Oh, they were heretics. They were pagan Christians. We don't do that, obviously. We see ourselves as not necessarily connected to them through apostolic succession, like they would say. We believe that we go back to them theologically. It's our theology that attaches us to the apostles. And that's what the reformers were about. Not to say that necessarily only reform people believe that, but Protestants are seeking to go back to the doctrinally to the apostles. And so this idea that you guys are anti-creedal and the creeds are a pagan summation of Romanism or whatever excuses you want to give, you guys do have a creed. There's a reason why your church doesn't want to affirm these Orthodox historic Christian creeds, because it flies in the face of your guys' prophetess and the pioneers. The reason they didn't want to submit to creeds, the reason they didn't want to submit to creeds was because doctrinally they were not in line with those creeds.
Exactly.
That's right.
And on the matter of commingling and the ecumenical, that is hogwash. And I'm not going to divulge much, but as a pastor, I'm a part of the fraternity, ministers' fraternity where I live. And almost all Orthodox Christian denominations are represented. But you know who's not, though? Here in Jamaica, Adventists hate the notion of working with non-SDA Christians. In few high-level organizations, they might, if they want to, skin in the game so that they won't be persecuted for their Sunday laws and what have you. But in terms of work with other Christians and respect other pastors and appreciate their work. In fact, we condemning us and preaching against us is at the heart of SDA evangelistic efforts. Week in, week out in their messages, and they don't want anything to do with us. They'll never partner with us to have any sort of evangelistic meetings to try to seek and save the lost. Why? Because they consider us even worse than the heathens themselves. So they make us their mission field, and they don't want anything to do with us, with any sort of Christian work. So they are not a big tent where everybody is all cozy and friends and we cool. Nope. They are standoffish. They are exclusivistic, and they don't want anything to do with Orthodox Christians.
Yeah. So Elsie, I want to read the quote that you were saying there. And folks, if if it sounds like we're interrupting each other, there's a little bit of a lag and a delay. So please bear with us on that. But I want to read the quote that you were just saying so that you know that, or people know that we're not putting words in their mouths. This is from Ellen White's Manuscript Releases, Volume 17, page 334. It's a little bit of a quote here, but I'm going to read through it quickly. Here's what she said. This was advice that she was giving to an Adventist missionary who was sent to Europe. There weren't very many Adventists there, so he was seeking advice on how to spread the Advent message. Quote, "The greatest prejudice of the Jewish nation of priests and rulers was stirred up against Christ because the people preferred to listen to Jesus rather than to them. The very same feelings of prejudice will be manifest in the priests and rulers of this time. We can do nothing that would close up the way before us in this country, like taking a position of superiority and putting before the people that we consider them heathen. In truth, they are worse than heathen. But this we are not to tell them. The clergy consider themselves as teachers, highly religious, and their churches send out missionaries to the work of converting the savages. But to have the implication that a similar work must be done for them, they would consider the worst kind of insult." So that is what the Seventh-day Adventist prophetess gave as advice to a missionary. The other Christians around you, we don't want them to know that we truly believe they're worse than the heathen. We need to build relationships with them so that we can use that as a vehicle to get the message out there. So don't give me this nonsense that you guys are some ecumenical tent, that you're just a safe haven of all sorts of different people. You know, you got Lutherans and Methodists and Presbyterians. No, you don't. No, you don't. You guys are your thing. You need to embrace that. You need to stop with trying to play both sides of the field where we're the true church. We're the remnant. But at the same time, no, we're part of the larger body of Christ. We're Protestants, even though we think that all of you are going to have the mark of the beast and eventually hunt us down and kill us one day. And you're all actually apostates and your prayers are going to Satan, who has assumed the first throne in the outer apartment. That's the truth. Don't give me this nonsense. I get worked up about this because this is part of why I started my channel. You Adventists, you guys need to stop. I'm not going to preach here, but you guys need to stop
preach, bro.
with the nonsense. You need to own up to what you actually teach and believe. Like, they've gotten a little more difficult with this in recent years, but like the Mormons, the Jehovah's Witnesses. The Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, will own their teachings and seek to defend it. You guys need to do the same thing. You need to stop with the both sides of the field and this nonsense of, oh, we're just like everybody else. We're inclusive. We're accepting. No, guys, you're not.